Great. So thanks so much for coming and joining me. Today we're going to start a three-part series about extracurricular activities and building the summer or building the extracurricular profile. Today we're going to go over summer programs. The next one I'm planning on having will likely be at the end of November, beginning of December, and then a third one will be in at the beginning of December. But all of them will go over different components of building the extracurricular profile. This one, like I said, summer programs because that's topical and that gives an idea of how we're really going to start. The time sensitive stuff really is the summer stuff with the with with deadlines that are typically going to come at the end of January, beginning of February. Teachers need letter of recommendation requests early. We want to start on the summer program applications by winter break to give the students enough time to complete essays and to work with the essay consultants and so forth. So this is the next thing that for our students and for all students that are pre-seniors, it's kind of like a key time to start the process and start the discussion about all of this. To give you an idea of how we're going to do things today. Oh gosh darn it. Okay. Oh no, go away. You go away. Did I just do that? Good gosh. Bizarre. I don't want that at all. I don't want to annotate anything. I just want to go to the next page. Okay, that's annoying, but maybe it'll give people time to come as well. All right, let me get back to the sharing then. I think it's fixed. All right, great. So what we're going to go over today is, like I said, the summer programs really, but I'm going to go over a lot of extracurricular stuff just so you have an idea of what you're going to be confronted with over the next couple of years, depending on where you're at. I know we've got a kind of a wide distribution of people that are attending today. But the big thing today, going over just the personal profile generally, how students move up what we call the step ladder from one year to the next, freshman to sophomore, sophomore to junior, and so forth. Um, yeah, I want to give an idea also of what programs move the needle, what summer programs, what academic programs actually matter in terms of college admissions. There are a few case studies that we go over, a calendar of how things are going to roll from now until the end of the spring, and an open time for questions. But just to start it off, to kind of regroup with all of this and remind people about college admissions in general. There's really three main parts: the transcripts, the test scores, and everything else. And the transcripts, to revisit this, two big things are grades on an A through F scale and rigor, the proportion of classes that are offered that are AP classes, IB classes, honors classes, and so forth. So that's component one, the centerpiece of everything, the transcript. After that, the test scores, SAT or ACT, the higher the better. Those two components are the academic arm of the review, and those are in the Ivies at least. They're put together as a whole and evaluated on typically a scale of 1 through 6, with one being the highest, six being the lowest. A combination of grades, rigor, test scores, and so forth. But that's kind of, as a lot of people say, the kind of the ticket to be taken seriously. What gets you in is everything else, and everything else includes stuff you can't control. Typically, where you're from, high school you're at, for the purposes of this conversation, gender, and then there's things that you can't control, and the things that you can control are the things that we're going over, and that brings us to the personal profile. The personal profile itself and developing the extracurricular profile, developing the aspects of your involvement that are going to kind of get you in. Um, there are a lot of different categories of what you can tackle. I'm not going to read all of these, but you can see that there's everything from a job to working for free. There's sports, there's art, there's academic stuff. There's a whole constellation of different activities that students can get involved in order to build the profile. And that's what extracurriculars are all about. And it's not always about building something that's going to get you into college. It's also about building interests, becoming a good human being and so forth. We're going to talk mostly about the college stuff today. But just be aware that extracurricular activities really can include everything from, fancy pants summer programs and publications all the way down to babysitting. Um, Throughout this little presentation, I've got my little rules of thumb that I'll throw out there. The first of these is that generally speaking, students want to be round and pointy. They want to be well-rounded. You want to have clubs that you're a part of. You want to have volunteering to show that you play well with others. It's good to have research these days because so many students do, and it's nice to show an academic focus. Um, Sports, art, music give some complexion to or give a little bit of texture to the student's complexion. So it's nice to have a couple of these things and not be one note. Pointy means that you have one or two parts of your profile that are really, really focused, developed. You go into depth with them. And one of those, no matter what, should be the academic stuff that you're going into. The major that you're going into. So when the application comes around, you want to have something to say that is going to answer the question. Um, uh, um, why do you want to study what you say you want to study here? So well-rounded, couple of pointy parts. One of those pointy parts being focused on stuff that is academic and related to your major for the purposes of the application essays as well as a number of different things. Um, 1 second. Oh boy, how interesting. Okay, good question. Somebody had a question already. Are sports really the most important extracurricular out of all activities? If you don't have grades and you're going for an athletic scholarship, typically sports are the best way to do it. If you're trying to get into, Caltech, no. I mean, that's the school that didn't win a basketball game for like 5 years. So it all depends on the institutional priority of the school. In the case of Southeastern Conference schools, Alabama, Ole Miss, Arkansas, athletics, at least as far as recruiting, pretty important. As far as being a part of the actual profile, athletics, I think, are important because of the other stuff that they can get you. Athletics can get you awards, athletics can get you honors, athletics can allow you to kind of bask in the glory of a team that's really good at stuff. Like if you go to De La Salle High School in Concord and you're like a third string kicker, still, you get to sort of on the application put that you all were state champions or whatever they win every year. So that's good. Sports are really good in particular for allowing students to develop leadership, which, as I'll go into, is one of the top things that you want to have in the profile. That's what makes a difference. Would But by themselves, just like kind of like being an average ball player or whatever in a conference that nobody's ever heard of. That's not going to help by itself. It's like any other activity. Consistent involvement always nice, but it's not something that's going to wind up getting you into the Ivies. Great question. All right, good. All right, so moving right along with that one. So round and pointy, be well-rounded with a couple of areas of focus that you're going into. Okay, let's see if we can keep going with the actual slideshow. All right. Rule of thumb number 2. In terms of involvement, not every involvement is built the same. Not everything that you get involved with is kind of the same level. For instance, volunteering doesn't, hold a candle to research and publication and things like that. Volunteering is one of those things that's kind of like a necessary but not sufficient condition for getting into good schools. You want, as I like always a lot of the times, volunteering allows you to not look like a sociopath. So it is something that helps you with helps you with that. Because you got you kind of a lot of this is marketing. You're sort of selling yourself, right? So that shows a nice part of who you are. That's not totally self-centered, but it's not something that you're going to be able to ride in to a fancy school. Deep, sustained academic engagement, though, is research, fancy summer programs that do move the needle, competitions that people have heard of where you're among the top competitors, award winners, etc. That always is what the priority needs to be on. Colleges are always going to see themselves as kind of bastions of intellectual engagement. So to the extent that that's not all you have going on, You want that kind of leading the way as far as the importance of the activity goes. Um, After that, and in my opinion, sometimes on the same level is leadership. And I say this again a lot. I'm sorry. I'm kind of you know repeat my little hooks. But I think that leadership really is so important these days for college admissions because there's so many students that are applying, and it's just used as a blunt instrument where you can separate the leaders from everybody else. And colleges have always kind of coveted leaders for their own sake. You always want to have the person that it's impressive. Want that person on campus. They're movers and shakers. But also, you get one captain of a team, you get 15 players, three captains of a team, 70 players in like football, one or two or three editors in chief, 40 staff writers, one or two or three drum majors, a whole mess of marching band performers, one ASB president usually. And in the case of like Logan and Milpitas High School, you get like 1,000 kids, 1,200 kids. No, more than that, right? Like 3,000, 4,000 kids. Geez, like a little city. So yeah, with leadership again, it's usable to separate one kid from all the other kids, and that's why the sports I would say are important because that's one of the ways that you can wind up by the time you're a senior, typically land a leadership position if you have any sort of talent. You just stick with the varsity team. Easier said than done, I know. But deep sustained academic involvement at the same level as and sometimes above leadership, and then kind of everything else. Okay, three questions. Let's see what we got. All right. Um, Great. Okay, so first question. If we have too many things on the plate and have to cut something between sports and other stuff, academic stuff, volunteering, what should we cut? For sports, we're talking about elite level sports and national level, regional level tournaments where we've won some awards. Okay, so if that's the case, and obviously this is something that we would speak about in one of our meetings as well. With that, I would say a lot of it would depend on what sport it is. If it's an NCAA sport that's going to be recruitable, if it's something that is going to be an institutional priority in places, or is it going to be something that's like rhythmic gymnastics? Is that the one where you throw the hoop in the air? Wonderful and amazing and Olympic, but not a varsity sport at most universities. So the sports thing, it would depend on the sport. For the other stuff, I would say usually the volunteering can go. I've never seen a student like kind of ride volunteering into a fancy school. Back in the old days, like literally 2007, 2008, we had a student from Lynbrook that had 4,000 hours of volunteering where she was like, had a rough home life, threw herself into Key Club, threw herself into all kinds of volunteering experiences. President of Key Club for several years, was knit like sweaters for penguins so they wouldn't get oil on their feathers during inevitable oil spills. And she got it like nowhere. It was like even the I think it was like Santa Clara wound up waitlisting her. It's kind of like, okay, you got the Catholic school that for all intents and purposes should really be prioritizing like outreach to others, and this kid can't parlay a full-time job of volunteering almost into an offer of admissions. Like that's it. And even when I was with UC, we would give not many points for. I mean, you could have after 200 hours total of volunteering, we would stop giving points for volunteering. So you could have 10,000 hours, but it wouldn't get you more than a certain amount of points, 300 points, which was equivalent to 3/10 or 3/100, maybe 3/100 of a grade point. So long story short, volunteering can typically get the old heave ho. Academic stuff, it shouldn't go. It would depend though on what it was. But great question. Feel for your follow up. Following the previous question, we're not looking for athletic recruit for college. Okay, so that's going to be something that would be. So that answers that question. If we're talking about non-recruitable type stuff, that the school is not looking at it as this student is going to contribute in this way to the university, then it becomes the same as another activity. It becomes the same as another extracurricular, where awards competing at a national level is fabulous, and it's going to really round out the profile, but it wouldn't be something that would be like a deal breaker to get rid of. So again, maybe depends on the school, depends on the level. Even if you're doing rhythmic gymnastics and the school isn't recruiting for it, you're still, if you're like one of the best in the world, that's something that you can kind of offer indirectly to the school. I'll give you a good example of that. I'm sorry I'm running my mouth on this, but I think it's probably relevant. We had a student, again, I think this was like 2007, 2008, student from Berkeley High School that played cello for the San Francisco Youth Symphony. And she got into tons of top schools with fair to midland grades and tests. And it was really I did not ride in to like, wasn't applying to like bachelor's of music programs. A lot of it was the reception of a student that was really, really, really good at something, even though they couldn't directly contribute to like by way of an audition, and you can contribute in other ways for like music, right? But couldn't directly contribute by like writing in the audition to a bachelor of music, and was admitted because you have a deep commitment to something, even though it's not an institutional priority of the school. It's typically going to help. Unless it's like, I mean, people don't care much about video games, or like, like super weird hobbies. But otherwise, yeah. All right. Can you define leadership? Club president, team captain, or can it be more than the titles? Yes and no. I think the club president, and that was the next question, by the way. Great question on the athletic stuff. Let me know other stuff about that. The other question is going to be a little bit, less focused. Can you define leadership? Club president, team captain, or can it be more than the titles? Even though it's like super archaic, because I didn't, I think that drawing on the experience that I had with UC helps with this, because I think it's very easy to kind of project this onto other schools. We would evaluate leadership based on the number of people you led, along with the title. If you were ASB president, that by itself, even if it was a small school, would get you significant leadership points. On the flip side, if you didn't have maybe a focused leadership position or like a title, but you were in charge of in some capacity, like and it's, I don't know exactly what that would be, but you're babysitting, you're in daycare, you're a daycare site manager, and you take over stuff on the weekends for your mom's daycare, and you're that could wind up working. So typically it was about maybe, I mean, counselor in training or camp counselors we give some to. I would say there are very few times out that where you can really separate the leadership from the title. Like, but the big ones, the ones that have the most people under them that you're leading, president, editor in chief, drum major, like I said. Um, uh, um, in other cases, the title by itself would mean a good amount, like Eagle. Eagle Scout would give more leadership points for than like senior patrol leader. But to my understanding, senior patrol leader is more of a direct leadership kind of position. Um, I would say that club president works as leadership. I would say that's a minor leadership award, but a minor leadership position, but it's still a significant, good leadership position. Club vice president, significant leadership position. I would say you start getting into secretary and treasurer of club, and then it starts becoming less important. So long story short, I'd say it's a combination of title and the number of people that you've led. Um, uh, um, but I can't, off the top of my head, think of many experiences where you wouldn't have the title if you had led, a good number of people. They usually are part and parcel. And differing values of leadership for you know for like I'll give you like a couple of years ago we had a student from Fremont. He was varsity for three sports for 4 years each, and was captain of three of them for at least 2 years, and with midland grades, Berkeley. And that's something the captaincy of the varsity sport, that was killer. Also, president of a couple of clubs, like he did something with, I think, like Hopkins Middle School, like ecology club or something like that. But anyways, you get the idea. I'll keep moving. My God. Um, so hierarchies, involvement, academic engagement, leadership, then everything else. Um, Now, to kind of move through this a little bit quickly, when you're doing this from just kind of from the start and from an overview, you do want to have a progression from one year to the next. I would say, beginning in ninth grade, you don't have to find the cure for cancer. Beginning in ninth grade, you want to get some volunteering, get exposure, low level camps, shop and drop as far as the interests go. Like I say here, ninth grade has a few goals. Stay away from toxic people. Get your sea legs emotionally in a new environment. Develop good study skills, note taking skills, and so forth, and kind of determine your interests. And to do that, throw a bunch of stuff up against the wall and see what sticks. Shop and drop. So ninth grade, you don't have to go bananas. It's just a matter of exploring stuff. I think in the fall of 10th grade is when you need to start kind of figuring things out a little bit more. By 10th grade, I'll usually tell students like you got to figure out by fall of 10th if you're at least going to be like engineering and CS or everything else, because there's a little bit of a different pathway for those. But you want to build on ninth grade's activities. Summer after 10th, you want a little bit more significant involvement. Summer after ninth, it's usually low level programs, like I said, something that's not crazy competitive. Summer after 10th, maybe you can start applying to Cosmos and things like that. But the interest should be a little bit more kind of congealed, so to speak. And for in-school extracurriculars, you're moving up the ladder as well. That's why you get involved in clubs in ninth, so you can be a member and then kind of a contributor and then on the executive committee and so forth. You want to, in ninth, again, explore, get involved so you can move up the ladder. Um, 11th grade, including the summer after 11th, is what you could call the capstone year, where with summer programs, you want to have the most competitive that you can wind up going after. For competitions, you kind of want to be at the highest level for no other reason than this is the last the colleges are going to see of your involvement. Most schools are going to have, you'll see, but in 12th, you have students applying for like 8, 9, 10 schools by November 1. So there's very little involvement in 12th that is really going to make an impact, unless it's like a captaincy, because most students will get that. So you want to at least have that in name. But as far as real significant involvement later in the year, you want to make sure you get as much done before the deadlines as you can. And that's something that students have trouble with, like with science fair competitions. Synopsis, the deadline I think is right around the corner. That's not going to move the needle with anybody that's an early action school or a regular decision school. It'll help for students that are like waitlisted or deferred if like science fair stuff comes back. But yeah, you get the idea. So 11th grade, big capstone year. You can't depend on much in 12th to really, kind of get much, yeah, move much as far as like results. Okay, so now I can take a couple more questions now that I got through that. We'll move on to the meat of the presentation, which is the academic programs. Okay, so let me see. Are these new questions? Um, okay, good. Okay, no, I already these are old questions. Okay, good. Great. All right. Feel free to ask other ones. But again, to revisit that, the step ladder, moving from ninth to 10th, 10th to 11th, somewhere between 11th and 12th, that's when you want to go big game hunting, so to speak, with the programs, competitions, and things of that nature. So let's get into the programs and talk about these a little bit, because I think that this is very interesting, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. And there's stuff that just costs so much money, and I find well, this is not my. We'll get to that in a second. Um, so so we've had the rules of thumb already, where we had like round and pointy and so on and so forth. And then we've got the hierarchy of involvement. A rule of thumb number 3. Now that we're at the programs, number 1, life science interest, biology, public health, the biochem, genetics. Those interests typically need some kind of a structured program on a college campus. You can't do much DIY over the summer if you want to get wet lab experience in biology. You need something that is typically going to be held at a research institute, um, uh, like Scripps, or which is part of a bigger university programs, which we'll get into, or some of the private ones like ASDRP, which is one of the better ones out there. But life science stuff, you typically need a program. You're not going to be cutting open frogs in your garage. Next one, engineering, mechanical, civil engineering, material science, and engineering. Those typically need summer programs as well. Because for the same reason, you got levers and gears and stuff like that. You're building spaghetti bridges and doing analysis of the integrity of materials. You need to be face to face usually. There was one year that Cosmos wound up doing the pandemic year where they did like online. It was like terrible. It's like kids like telling me I had to watch someone a Bunsen burner by video for like 15 minutes. So nobody does that anymore, thankfully. But all the hands-on stuff like 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 for a good illustration, the Johns Hopkins Exploring Engineering Summer Program, which is solid. They tried doing it remotely one year, and it was lousy. And then the next year they did it remotely off the Hopkins campus, but they did it in local locations, two of which were in the Bay Area, one at Laney and one at Ohlone. So yeah, you need the face-to-face stuff. You need the structured programs that are going to be in those disciplines. Humanities stuff, social science stuff, computer science stuff, math can largely be DIY. Oh, I mean, and remote. If you wanted to do those programs, but you can fit stuff in. Like with computer science, as so many students are, you could really have like a mosaic of different things over the summer where you've got like a week spent at the Luddy Summer Program at the University of Indiana, 2 weeks spent at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign at their WISE program, July spent at Cosmos, the first 2 weeks of August spent at Roar program at Berkeley, and the entire time, you're doing competition prep and community college classes remotely. That's something where you can like really Frankenstein together a really, really good summer. And it's not like super duper expensive either comparatively. The life science stuff though, you typically need like the face to face and stuff like that. And CS, like I said, humanities, social sciences, math. That a lot of that is translates real well to distance and real well to doing a whole bunch of things. Like you want to study, you know, archaeology, get a volunteering position or a job at the Rosicrucian Museum off of the Alameda in San Jose. Take an online class from Chicago in archaeology. Do something with a research position with a faculty member. Again, translates super well. Um, so there's a bunch of programs out there that, like I said, necessitate you doing them. Or there's majors that would necessitate you doing a program for them. But what programs matter? Not to like if you like the one that I always come back to, and I'll show you this and say the Columbia University summer programs can be very, very pricey, and I don't think that you get a lot of bang for your buck. Um, Elite programs are typically the opposite. They're you get a lot out of them. These are the programs here that will take you into the top schools. If you do one of these, you will usually wind up at a real fancy selective pedigreed university. Getting to these is the hard part. It's not like all of a sudden, it's a total arbitrary kind of like, the total crapshoot. No, I mean, by doing the B of A Student Leaders Program, a program where you're interning, doing economic development of an urban area as an intern with Bank of America advisors, that's something where you have to have tons of leadership going into that and a real bent toward economics or business. The Clark Scholars Program, you need to have done some serious scholarship before then in order to go into this program at Texas Tech, where they got like 12 kids that are spending, I think, 8 weeks, with a faculty member one-on-one, developing high level stuff in any number of disciplines, from humanities all the way to lab science. RSI is the one that most people know about. Research Science Institute. That's a collaboration usually between Harvard and MIT. That's one where it's like a 2% acceptance rate or something like that. 50 domestic kids, 50 international kids. The flip one of that is an unusual program called TAS. It used to be called the TASP, but that's since changed. That one TAS has been around since the 1950s. Some real top scholars in the humanities went through TAS, like Francis Fukuyama. That's the big time elite political science professor at Stanford went through there. A lot of Nobel laureates went through there. It's changed over the past couple of years, and there's been some real scathing articles that have come out of it that have just talked about it as being real kind of like like weird cultish ultra left wing humanities type stuff, or cultish ultra left wing kind of, I don't want to say brainwashing, but it's you read some of the articles, and no matter what side of the political spectrum you're coming from, it's kind of like, this is weird. The last one on there is MOP, used to be known as MOSP, and that's the Math Olympiad summer program. But these guys, you do these, you get into these, and then the next stop is a school with ivy on the walls. Not not UOP in Stockton, but the ones on the East Coast. So a notch below these guys are the top tier ones, and these are when we start working with students on the summer programs, and the majority of these applications aren't open. You know, the most of the summer program applications will open up at the end of November, beginning of December. And then no, this month is when me and Kara and Shirley and Jenna and Gabby get together, and we'll start putting together the options for summer involvement. And you typically meet with one of them, you decide on the programs, then you and I go into them. It's in more detail in December, and then typically in December and over the winter break, you work on the applications. Um, but so these aren't even open yet. But when they do, these are the ones that we'll typically recommend. I can't remember the last time. I mean, periodically I'll recommend the B of A Student Leaders Program. We did a student last year that's like cheerleading captain and ASB president. Um, uh, but um, but usually the B of A Student Leaders Program is the only one that we recommend. If a kid comes in and they're like, I've got several publications, and I could not think of doing anything but my time to go applying to RSI. Then we'll do it. But it's like a 15-page application, and low admit rate, so low return on investment. And if you've been through the summer program process before, you'll probably remember that kids run out of gas at about 5 or 6 of these summer programs. With college applications, the panic starts kicking in, and you have kids that are writing essays for like 30 schools. But with the summer programs, like, if nothing else, I do a community college class. And then they got like AP stuff and midterms and things. So they'll usually run out of gas, like I said, at about 5 or 6 of the applications. So you don't want to burn one on something that is really unlikely to come through. Um, uh, um, yeah, good, good, good. Let me see this. We got a question here. Okay. All right. Yeah. And with this, can you recommend some life science summer programs that are easier to get into and as stepping stones for future summer programs? Yeah, I'll get into those in a second. When we get to the programs that are like good, but yeah, not like super, you know, over the top. As far as getting in, but yeah, the life science summer programs. Like I said, you kind of need them as the first as the stepping stone ones, right? And everybody feels the same way. That's the problem, is that everybody knows you need the summer programs for the life science stuff. So you get just tons of competition. So these are the programs where we'll really start recommending these guys. Simons, which is it's life sciences at SUNY Stony Brook. Garcia, which is a material science at SUNY Stony Brook. Um, Ross Promise and Sumac, which are math programs at Ohio State, Boston University, and Stanford, respectively. Grips, a genetic program at Stanford, Simmer, immunology program at Stanford, Jackson Lab. That's an independent research facility, but they do a lot of high school stuff. It's in Maine. HSHSP is the honors summer, what is the high school honor science program at Michigan State. They were off for a couple of years of the pandemic. They're back now. NASA programs, which a lot of kids in the Bay get because we've got Moffett Field. SSP, which we had 3 students do it last summer. A program at Caltech where you'll usually be at, like, I think last year they did it like somewhere like Georgia State, um, Ojai, New Mexico, and like somewhere in no Socorro, New Mexico, and Ojai, California, I think. So you wind up tracking the movement of a comet. Um, and then the last one that's really, really good, but it's one of the few out there that's super expensive. So it's as we'll get to in a second, it'll be the opposite. It'll be the exception to the rule that I get to in a second. Is MNTSI, the Management and Technology Summer Institute, the Jerome Fisher Program in Management and Technology Summer Institute. That's at UPenn, and it's a collaborative program between the School of Engineering and Applied Science and the Wharton School of Business. Real hard to get into, really, really good program. And 30% of the students, last I read, that were in the undergrad program, that's the same program, the Jerome Fisher Program in Management and Technology, that's between Wharton and engineering. 30% of the students in that undergrad program came through the MNTSI program. I don't know if things have changed over the last couple of years, but like I said, that's been the case. Well, that was the case for some time, but I think it's still the same. So these are programs where, outside of MNTSI, typically subsidized or free, or you get what you call a stipend. All right, next level. These guys still good, still solid, much more accessible than the ones that I just went over. And this is like the catch-all. So there's the Davis Young Scholars Program. That's one at UC Davis where it's competitive. Not it's not free or super subsidized. It's good. You do a lot of plant and animal biology. Cosmos, everybody knows the California State Summer Programs for Math and Science. For all intents and purposes, an entry level program from our area, probably a 10% acceptance rate because everybody applies. A couple of years ago, there were 250 kids from Mission San Jose that applied. Cosmos has clusters, as they're called, at 5 campuses. LA is new. Davis, San Diego, Irvine, Santa Cruz, and the selectivity is related. I mean, for the selectivity has a lot to do with where you're coming from, but at least as far as the cluster goes, the less popular it is, the easier. Life science, hard. Artificial intelligence, hard. Bugs and bones and stuff with exoskeletons at UC Santa Cruz, not as hard. Um, SSTP, that's the initialism of a couple of programs, one at Florida, one at Iowa. They're different names, summer science training program and summer student science training program or something. Both are mostly science. You work with a group under a mentor, one at Florida and one at the University of Iowa, both solid. Carleton has some programs, and Carleton is a liberal artsy type college in Northfield, Minnesota, just outside of Minneapolis. They do a lot of stuff with liberal arts as well as with computer science, and that's somewhat selective. The Iowa Young Writers Workshop, as well as Kenyon, is really, really good. Iowa's more competitive, but if you're a creative writer, that's as high as you can usually get that program. Um, BWSI is Beaverworks. That's for computer science kids. If you're rising 11th, usually, and some rising 10th will apply to that. That's a great program, and that one we've had a lot of success with. They're a 30% admit rate overall, and I think last year we probably had 5 kids that did it. Where it's computer science, computer engineering, electrical and computer engineering. It's on campus or online, and you're doing a project with a group under a mentor. It's great content for the essays. And it's somewhat selective. It's not like RSI, but it's good. Um, UC Santa Barbara RMP and the one to the right, UC Santa Barbara RSA. These used to be, as you asked earlier, about kind of entry level type programs for the life sciences. But over time, when something gets a good reputation, everything gets more popular. So right now, these things are like $10,000, $11,000 because you pay out the nose for room and board. You do research. You do come out with some kind of a presentation. They do give you support and kind of like shopping it around for publication, but it's hard to get into, and it's expensive. So, and the applications are long. RMP is the Research Mentors Program. RSA is the Research Science Academies. RSA has like some classes and some research. RMP is all research. From the top here, and I apologize if I'm like just listing things, but it is something that you're going to have to get acquainted with these, and it's good to get to hear the names and get context. So I'm sure I'll forget everything, but still, good to have it because we're going to start on these practically. I mean, in practice, doing stuff soon, so you're going to have to at least know the initialism. So I don't know why I'm apologizing. Anyways, below BU Rise at the top, research. Is it research in science and engineering? Good program. There's a couple of different tracks. It's kind of like RMP and SRA combined, where one is pure research and the other one is kind of research with classes. Good on campus, good essays, good content, not cheap. What can you do? CISA, the California State Summer School for the Arts. I've never had a student that's had a bad experience at CISA. It's awesome. It's at Cal Arts. Get to be around for like 3-4 weeks. A bunch of other funky art people studying studying your creative passion. Really well known, subsidized by the state. It's like the artsy version of Cosmos. I love it. Good for creative writing, good for visual arts, good for everything. Um, One below that, Epic at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, Engineering Possibilities in College, a week long, not super duper hard to get into, but hard enough to be on this list, where every day you're doing something a little bit different in engineering, where one day is civil, the next one is computer, the next one is chemical, the next one is mechanical. Um, Good with that, residential. Roar, Robot Open Autonomous Racing. That's what it is at UC Berkeley. 2 weeks long. First week is like immersion in Python. It's a lot like in Spirit AI. Second week, you're doing stuff with computer vision and RC cars, and you do it on their RC car track. During the pandemic and for a couple of years, they had it as an online version, but they brought it back to the campus, and it's excellent. Um, for business students, a lot of programs at Wharton, uh, um, uh, not cheap, but varying degrees of selectivity. Leadership in the business world, really hard. Fundamentals of entrepreneurship, not quite as bad. Um, the Yale Young Global Scholars Program, that's one that's actually open, and there is a deadline for that in December, and that has it's kind of a combination social science and technology and humanities type program. For students that have kind of hybrid interests, that's something that I'll include. Good program, used to be very selective and really carried a lot of weight in applications. It doesn't seem to anymore, but still selective enough to make this list. Um, the last one I haven't hit on here is SIP, the Science Internship Program with UC Santa Cruz. That has a very late deadline in May, but it is a research program where UC Santa Cruz faculty farm out research to students that typically have some data skills, and then they'll work with them for 6 weeks throughout the summer. It's a great project, online as well as residential, in Santa Cruz. Started a long time ago by a Harker dad, and Harker kids still get, in my opinion, some some real weight there. Now, starter programs. This is something that you had questions about. Um, for computer science, there are and engineering. Um, I'd say that the Inspirit AI is probably as good as you're going to wind up getting. And that's a program that's, I think, 20 hours, 25 hours of instruction. You work with a group, you do Python immersion, you do machine learning stuff. You do a research project using machine learning and data science and Python in order to predict criminal recidivism rates. Good essay content, good experience. Like I said, for it's a good starter program. And it doesn't break the bank either. It's not something where you're looking like at the like the Columbia summer program that's just bananas. I think in Spirit something like $1,200. So for affordable comparatively. Girls Who Code, obviously for girls who code. It's they have year-long programs and clubs that you can find at a lot of schools, and they also have summer programs. Those are good starter programs. Everybody knows the Girls Who Code name, and it's a good way to get involved. Programs at Illinois that haven't opened up yet called WISE, which is like something like World Youth Summer in Engineering. Aerospace engineering, data science, mechanical engineering, online, face to face, 2 weeks long. For the online stuff, doesn't break the bank. For the face to face stuff, very good. Life science. This is where you're going to have a lot of options, and I it's a lot of it is going to be up to you. Um, Georgetown is one that we've had a lot of students do, where there will be everything from biology stuff to surgery stuff, some hands-on work, a lot of life science stuff. Now, they've got their own medical school. They do a lot of work with life science work. 2 weeks long, 3 weeks long. They've got week-long programs as well. Not bad. Residential. So I think that it's good. Get a different experience. Is it? It's not the only one out there by any stretch of the imagination. Like almost all pre-college programs, from Brown pre-college to Cornell pre-college, um, uh, uh, will have some kind of hands-on lab science, wet lab type work. USC will have it. Penn will have it. All of these are very accessible. The Cornell ones and the Brown ones and the USC ones particularly so. Rising 10th, need some solid grades, but no need to be blowing anybody out of the water. Um, yeah, residential. Yeah, you can get the idea for the cost. Stanford has several as well. They've got two that are particularly well known. One is called CASP, and one is which is a clinical anatomy program. Another one, CSSSI, the Cardiothoracic Surgical Skills Internship with Cardiothoracic Stanford Surgical Skills Internship. They're somewhere between starter and the next level up. They're not super duper selective, but they're not as accessible as Georgetown and like the summer programs at USC and Columbia and Brown and Cornell that I mentioned. Um, For political science, Georgetown, great, and that's what they're known for. American University, one of the top 10 poli-sci and international programs in the country, not known for much else, but that's one thing that they're good at. In DC, a lot of 2-week institutes that are fabulous. USC has a lot too. They do a lot of hands-on work. They go to the city of LA. They wind up going into courtrooms. So good programs with all of those. Poli-sci, you can also do a lot of stuff online. So Stanford doesn't have anything, or in the past couple of years, they haven't had anything face to face over the summer. It's all been online. So, this one of their programs would wind up working. And they also, like in Stanford pre-collegiate studies, have a lot of humanities type work. So these are, programs that are, accessible, not bad as far as getting in. And a lot of face to face as well as online opportunities. For arts, for students that have an interest in digital art, for students that have an interest in traditional art, they'll usually do they'll do like Hong Yun has something every summer that they'll wind up doing. So they work on their portfolio over the summer. They'll take classes, they'll take lessons, um, uh, um, but typically not all. I mean, and there's some out there like Pratt, good. RISD has a good summer program. One that's really accessible is DMA at the Digital Media Academy at UCLA. So if they've got any interest in digital art and design, then that is a good start. With it's like open enrollment, first come first serve. And never had a student that hasn't liked it. Do a little bit of stuff with with Photoshop. Do a little bit of stuff with web design. They offer UCLA credit for it. I think it comes with a grade, so it works all around for everybody. Um, so yeah, now, rule of thumb number four. Let me do questions now. Okay. Ooh, great. All right, boy, great, two great questions. All right, let me do this. This is on the IB program, which is a discussion in and of itself. And both business and life sciences. That's something. Let me get to that in toward the end because both of those require, some a little bit of elaboration. Um, and this way I keep you on the presentation too. You can't go. You got to wait around. Um, okay, but I'll get to that. I promise. Okay, so rule of thumb number four. Again, not to be so tacky as to be talking about price, but it is something that's obviously and like the elephant in the room with a lot of this stuff. How much do you have to pay in order to really kind of make this whole thing work? And this is before tuition even. So, rule of thumb number four, there really is generally an inverse relationship between the selectivity of a program and how much it impacts admissions and how much it costs on the other hand. The one exception to that, weirdly, is the MNTSI program, the program at Penn, where it's among the pricier programs, but it still moves the needle. But otherwise, just to give you some illustrations, the like we've got here we've got the Columbia pre-college program, which is the residential one where you get to live in Harlem for 3 weeks, and take classes that you could probably take at Foothill or De Anza. But obviously you don't get the fanciness, and it's like not cheap as you can see, 12 grand per session. Um, but on the flip side, for like local kids, there's a Columbia for kids in it's almost all I think for New York City kids, but there's a number of kids from New Jersey that do it. The Columbia Science Honors Program, which is a Saturday morning program for local kids, and it costs like nothing, right? It's super selective and it's really impactful. It's been around since what is that? It's been around since the 50s. So it's solid, really, really good. And doesn't cost anything. The other one's kind of like, oh, we're using this one to keep the lights on. Yeah, this one is kind of like we're doing it for the good of the community, and it doesn't stop with them. Stanford's really that way too. Stanford, you got the summer session high school. You got you could get a Honda Civic or you get that with the again, wonderful. You get to live at Stanford, beautiful, best weather in the world. Fancy, intelligent people. You get the dorm experience. But is it going to wind up impacting admissions? No, not at all. Um, However, other stuff will, like grips. Um, uh, um, the genomics research internship program at Stanford, which you could read for yourselves. I just read it off the slide. It's this one is good, and there's several Stanford programs that are that way, that they're designed primarily for Bay Area kids. They're commuter only. There are no residential stuff. And it's like, best price ever, free 93. So yeah, you get this a lot of different places. Do I have another one on there? Thought I did. No, I don't. But yeah, those are the two big examples, and oh boy, there's one that's like at Cal too. Cal's got this crazy one, which is like a chemistry program that's like at 18,000. A lot of this really is trying to appeal to a certain niche group of folks that want the real fanciness and the pedigree, and maybe not as concerned about the bottom line. So this is why everybody's got different stuff that they're concerned with. So now, just to give you a calendar of how this tends to roll, now currently there are some very early programs that are open. The Yale Young Global Scholars Program, for instance, that's the one that I mentioned. I think it's got a December 20th deadline. They already had their early action deadline, but it's no good, I don't think, because if you unless you're sure you want to do it, because the early action deadline was like at the end of October. And if you get in, you got to give them a commitment, pay everything in full by the end of December. So, we pitched this to a lot of folks. I told people about it. Kara, Shirley, and Jenna did. We had one student that did the early deadline who's really committed to it. But for the most part, people are like, no, I want to see what my other options are, which both of them make sense. The B of A student leaders program, that one is open. That one usually has like a 12-15 deadline. That's really hard. Very competitive. Another 15-page application like RSI is. The good news is with RSI and with B of A is that for the rising seniors, we at least get a lot of information for your essays from these applications because they're so extensive. You don't leave any stone unturned. Like every application essay after that has to do with academics is going to be poaching in some way from the RSI essays or the TAS essays or the B of A essays. But on the flip side, like I said, remember, you only have gas in the tank for probably 5 or 6 of these over the summer. B of A is open. TAS, the weird cultish one, as you'll Google that and find the articles on it, is weird. RSI is open. RSI and TAS both usually have a January 15th deadline, right thereabouts. RSI, like TAS, like B of A, tons of writing. We'll walk y'all through it. I mean, that's like we start the essay consultants, they finish off the job with the summer, the college applications, and start moving on the summer programs. So we work on that immediately once you start it off, but be aware, a lot of stuff. Launch X, that's one that's it's like, what is that meme from like Star Wars? Like, that's a name I haven't heard in a long time. Launch X went dark for a while during the pandemic. Before the pandemic, it was like sponsored by MIT. Then stuff happened and they broke off on their own and they were dark for a little bit. And now they're back. I don't know if they're face to face, but it's typically held in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It's good. It's one of the few programs that's out there that combines tech and entrepreneurship that's legit. You've got the B of A pro, you've got like MNTSI, which is the big one, entrepreneurship and business. There's a program that's run out of Santa Clara called Camp Biz Smart, which is usually for younger kids, and it's cool. LaunchX is not as competitive as MNTSI at all, and it doesn't move the needle. But it's a good way to like kind of you want to get experience, sort of like bringing a digital product to market. It's great. In November and December, most other programs open. SRA that's at Santa Barbara, RMP at Santa Barbara. The majority of the pre-college programs. The Before winter break, no matter what, you want to ask teachers for letters of recommendation, because they need time, and the deadlines are all over the place and weird. So ask the teachers before winter break, unless you're applying to like RSI or B of A or the Yale program, where you might want to ask now or like in the next couple of weeks. Usually one teacher is all you need. It should be in the field that you're going into, just the person that can write most glowingly about you. In the case of YYGS, I don't think they even need a teacher. I think they just need one person that can speak something about like your intellectual abilities. But ask early. As per the usual, the Fremont School District students are going to have issues with their teachers that'll try and jam you up and not write letters of recommendation for you. But that's been going on for the past 8 years. And a lot of other teachers too. There's some teachers that won't write for Cosmos. Ask. That's all you can do. Ask before winter break. We want to start on the essays, during winter break. You got to ruin every good part of your year. But at least that's the time where you can do it, and at least you get it out of the way and you can copy and paste a lot of stuff after that first one. There are some early deadlines in January, RSI, as I've mentioned, the Telluride Scholars Program tasks, a lot of the University of Chicago immersion programs, which are good for economics, good for physics. There's RIBS, the biology program. Those tend to have like a late January deadline. Most standard deadlines are in February and March. Cosmos, for instance, doesn't even open until January 10th, and the deadline is usually February 10th, February 15th. So we've got a while on that one. Still, you want to get things started. And we know generally for the summer programs, the essays don't change dramatically from one year to the next. I can't remember the last time the Cosmos essays changed. So even though the application isn't open until January, we'll usually start on Cosmos essays before that and just assume that the prompt's the same. And if they change, then we scramble and everybody's annoyed. But gotta gamble. Um, and February, March, and April, really beginning in February, we got to start developing Plan Bs, and that's especially the case for the life science kids because, as we've talked about, you need the programs. Everybody's applying to the programs. It's hard to get into the programs. So life science kids more than anything else need Plan Bs, and the problem is it's also hard with those because Plan B in a wet lab, especially from what is the Plan B going to be? We got to face to face stuff at UCSF and Stanford. There's limited of those. San Jose State and the Cal States typically have policies against high school students being on campus. So we gotta do things early and have Plan B, Plan C, and Plan D in effect. Like I said, deadline for this SIP at UC Santa Cruz quite late, like April. So that one you can't bank on that. That screws everything up. Um, uh, um, all of these, by the way, are going to have their own deadlines for depositing, and that messes up the whole calendar too. Where with colleges, when you guys apply to college, the aside from early decision, the commitment day will be May 1st of your senior year. It's the same for everyone. But for the summer programs, the commitment dates are all over the place. Like I said, you do, Yale early action, you got to commit the tuition by December 20th. Where for SIP, the Santa Cruz program, the application doesn't even open until April. So a lot of this is kind of juggling and thinking okay, what is my priority? And how am I gonna juggle the deadlines in order to meet that goal? And we work together on that, obviously. Okay. Um, Geez, case studies. How much time do I have? Oh God. All right. Well, I'll try and move through these quickly. And then we have some questions. So, but I won't believe everybody likes case studies because they're real people. The names have been changed. So let's go through some of these. And the reason that I bring these case studies up in particular is because these are the students that have done the impressive summer programs that I mentioned. Really good kids with really good results. Not everybody's perfect, and all of them, for the most part, good. Aside from one, they go to private public schools, so it's there's nothing that they're doing, aside from getting, I mean, great, obviously great grades, great test scores. But so you get the idea. But again, just be aware the disclaimer: these are students real good. So this is all last year too. So Alice, fake name, computer science, admitted to Northwestern, from a Bay Area private school, not Harker, not Menlo, not Crystal. Did Cosmos at Santa Cruz, did UC Santa Barbara SRA, a number of other things that are not related to summer programs, which I mentioned just in order to give more context. Did a lot of competitive computer science stuff, USACO Silver or USACO, depending on where you put the emphasis. Conrad Challenge, good business, tech, entrepreneurship competition. Good leadership. That's something common you see with a lot of this. Even if it's not, she's captain two dance teams. It's not like she's president of the school, but still good. ASB rep, good. You're you get some responsibility. So computer science, Northwestern worked out well. Good grades, good test scores. Really leverage the summer programs well. Did she need to? Probably not. CS kid. Yeah. This next one though did need him. She's the life science gal obviously because her name is Shirley. Went to Wesley or got into Wellesley, as well as Wash U. Did one of the local internships. Stars is, from what I recollect, it's a plastic surgery internship they opened up a couple of years ago for Bay Area kids. Um, Los Altos City Council Youth Committee, so leadership. If you can't get it in school, youth councils always good places to get it. They're appointed, it's legitimate, people know them, very cool stuff. Stanford Youth Leadership Conference. That's kind of a combination summer program as well as leadership thing. And if you're a life science student, we'll usually pitch that one to you. It's 4 days long, typically in August, typically remote, and it's Hep B awareness that's run by the Join Jade Foundation out of the Asian Liver Center at Stanford. Um, Stanford Neuroscience Journal Club, cool. SRA, great, and did her own research program at her high school at Los Altos High. But did SRA, good. And like I said, she needed it. Does a kid in computer science need like to do research on computer vision? Probably not. I mean, I guess you could if you wanted to ultimately do research, but you don't necessarily need it. With the life science stuff, in order to speak deeply, usually about what you want to study, you typically would want to prioritize that, or you want to have it. Student Michael Z, computer science at Caltech, nerding it up. So he's got the Berkeley Roar Summer Program, Robot Open Autonomous Racing, 2 weeks long. Good, not super selective. In Spirit AI, good, not super selective. Did a cool AI plus X project in computer vision. Internship with software development, good leadership, tennis captain. Good, I mean, super, 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 super bright. So I think that and very and interesting. It had a lot of cool stuff going on. The one thing that did I think work out very very well is the project that he did, and a Spirit AI it's not RSI, but he did the AI plus X thing, which they upsell you on after you do it. And he did a good project on computer vision as related to tennis shots. Used that as one of the topics for the Caltech essays, and obviously didn't hurt. You know, but good, interesting, well-rounded student for a niche school. Works out that way. Um, next one. This next one is my world beater from 4 years ago, where I worked with this student from eighth grade on, and like from the word go, he had like ice water in his veins. He was just like a mercenary as far as college admissions type stuff. He did everything. Launched a legit nonprofit. FBLA Nationals, Stanford Econ Research Intern under a Nobel laureate, Eagle Scout, Launch X, which was really good at the time. I did a Wharton program where you also wound up working, extending it, doing research for a Wharton faculty member, and did the B of A Student Leaders program, which is really kind of like the pinnacle of everything else. B of A is really, really good. Also, some other stuff out there: saxophone, track and field, cross country. But these are the big ones. The B of A thing, though, that moves the needle. That makes a difference. You got into a bunch of other stuff that year too, but wound up going to B of A. Okay, Saul. Um, uh, Obviously not the name. So Claremont McKinney, Econ did the Leadership in the Business World Summer programs. Fabulous. Um, uh, um, Good program. Moves the needle a little bit with Penn. It really just kind of rounded him out though. He had more stuff than just the summer program. I guess that he's not the best representative of that, but he is good representative of other stuff. Eagle Scout, um, founder and president of the Business and Econ Club, captain of varsity water polo, captain of varsity swim, co-founder and co-president of Bio Olympiad, and a barista at Starbucks. And that was the topic of the main Common App essay. And as much as I try and promote Starbucks to people, nobody bites. He did. So Starbucks, you want to do business, you want to show some grit, fabulous. You learn so much: point of sale, supply chain, unionization, customer service, working for the man. Last one, Jamie M. UC Santa Cruz SIP, did the cool State Department program, class president, which was great. One thing, the one thing on here I wanted to showcase though was for government political science. She did something called Girls State. There's also something called Boys State. These are state programs that are run by auxiliaries of the American Legion. They run real conservative, but they really do it seem to impact the application. There's tons of leadership. You're basically going to, I think that hers was at Sac State, where you live with other girls that are interested in poli sci, and you basically build your own government over the course of a week. It's awesome. Again, it depends on it's a real interesting summer. You go to the Telluride Scholars Program and get left wing. You go to boys state, girls state, get right wing. You wind up totally confused by the end of the summer. But girls state, boys state, really good. Nobody knows about it though, and you need to be nominated by the high school. So if you're interested, obviously holler at me like everything, and holler at your counselor and see what can happen with that, because not a lot of people do it. Not a lot of people even like recognize, like apply for it. So, or not. I mean, not a lot of people are even, I think, aware enough to put in a word to the administration that they might want to be recommended for this. Yeah. Um, that she was from a rural area. She was not from the Bay. And with a boy state kid we had from a couple of years back, he was from the peninsula, but I have not seen anybody from the South Bay or from Fremont do it. Okay, so just so you know, our next presentations, I'm going to have these over the coming weeks. Part two is leadership, volunteering, and co-curricular involvement. Leadership, talked about it a lot, super important, different ways to get it. Obviously, there's the standard fare with like captains and ASB and stuff, but there's also, as I mentioned, like youth councils that are really good ways to get that leadership. Volunteering, there's some good stuff out there. And co-curricular involvement, leadership, and other things that you can get involved with in school. Co-curricular in school versus like extracurricular out of school. And the last one, research competitions. I'm nerding it up as I've used once before today. But going back to questions for now, we've got a couple of good ones that I've been putting on ice. So, as someone who's going through the IB programs, what are some summer finance programs and how to go about getting internships in the summer? Good question. So, and those are kind of two questions. There's summer finance programs. There's how to go about getting internships in the summer. With the summer finance programs, or let's say with finance programs just in general, you're going to have the Wharton programs that are going to be generally selective. The Penn program, like leadership in the business world, has historically been not as selective as the Management and Technology Summer Institute, but still very good. And there's some other summer programs, and there's some other Wharton programs in finance that are solid too. Just not leadership in the business world. There are some kind of niche programs that are shorter, like Wall Street 101 at Bentley, where you do kind of stock portfolio development. There's also like you want to do a little bit more of a CS bent, where it's more entry level. Then you've got UCLA, Python for finance. Um, and there's competitions. There's the Wharton finance competition where you wind up doing like you invest with Wharton Bucks with a team with a group of students. Um, uh, um, yeah, those would be the big. There are some other ones. There's some you know like for students in the Northeast, there's like a Morgan Stanley thing that just closed a couple of weeks ago. I don't think that there's anybody in our group that would have qualified for it because of the location. Um, but when you're looking at something like that, I mean, the Morgan Stanley thing, that was like a location sort of focused or location based, kind of summer thing. The There's at least for internships for the students from that we've worked with that have worked like with somebody in like private equity or like with a hedge fund, all nepotism, and you see it on like the first call. It's like, okay, who worked for you know like Silver Fox private equity based out of Fort Lauderdale? Because nobody really gets that, and that's the way that it goes. For the otherwise it's hit or miss where you're applying for things that are largely local and ultra competitive, or they are among the programs that I mentioned. Again, at the top, you've got Wharton, you've also got the UCLA stuff and other things, but those are the best ones to get it. Like I said, the Penn ones tend to move the needle a little bit more, especially with Penn than the other ones. And the internships, again, a lot of it, aside from those spot ones, going to be a lot of nepotism. We can talk about the internships though. I'll give you a great illustration though of internship type stuff. City of San Mateo, with I don't your IB program, so you're not you're not Bay, but City of San Mateo is they're good with it. City of Pleasanton, but that's it. It's like you're getting the local things where you're getting students, to to um to commit to those, to apply to those, but not much national. The B of A program is good. It's kind of a leadership type thing, but it really is something that, at least as far as kind of like, leaders in business. It's good. It's the most competitive one out there. So B of A, then the Penn ones, the Bentley one, the UCLA one, then competitions. Um, yeah, business also, just for the record, I didn't mention this here because can't talk all day, but for business, as I've probably mentioned to a number of you, the two things that I see as or like the three things that I see as kind of impactful are direct business related opportunities, quant skills, and leadership. Quant skills, high level math, have some sort of grade of calculus. Try early in the career so they can see the skill with that. Leadership, being in charge of something, it seems to translate really well for business students, and directly applicable business skills. FBLA, DECA, good. Launching your own venture, great. Starbucks, doing a workaday job, terrific. One other thing that's interesting that we did some research on last year, and I forgot, what the source was, so don't quote me on it, but it was something like 30% of students at Wharton wound up doing speech and debate in high school. And I doubt that that's almost certainly correlation rather than causation, but it's just something to think about. Um, uh, and also with IB, just to bring that into the equation, if you're doing, the IB math should be enough to cover, the regardless of which one it is, it's going to be enough to cover you know, the math orientation for something with finance. All right. Good question. Next one. My son is interested in both business and life science and has activities in both. Is there a college major or summer program that combine both? There is a college major. There's one at Penn, and it's called um, the Roy and Diane Vagelos program in business and the life sciences. And it's just like that Jerome Fisher program, where it's a hybrid program, this time between Wharton and arts and sciences. But that's their orientation, is it's management in the health sciences and the life sciences. Summer programs, no, there's not anything that I've seen out there that combines those two. It's hard enough to get business and computer science together, much less business and life science with the summer programs. Um, but I would with something like that. If both of those interests are kind of prominent, I don't think that you need to fuse them now. I think that you could take those because, like I said, you want to be well rounded with pointy parts, and the pointy parts can be a number of different things, and one of them can be business, and the other one can be life sciences. So, to the extent that you could fit both of them into the schedule, it's fine to pursue both of them without bringing them together in some kind of a capstone passion project. Doing it with both of them together would be exceptionally hard. Um, uh, so, what I would do is, if you wanted to do something like pursue both of them if you've got time. If you got to get rid of one or the other in order to, make time for other things, and we talk and figure out what the priority is. To be frank, as far as it's six of one, half a dozen of the other. It's not engineering or CS. Stern's really hard for business. Wharton's really hard for business, but for the most part, at fancy schools, business and life science stuff is going to be about the same as in terms of getting in. Um, oh, you know what? There is the Berkeley program too. There's the Berkeley program that's doing something with Haas. This one of the speaker programs I think is doing something. They got MET, which is the entrepreneurship program, but I think they also have a life science program there too. So that's another one, but not many. So when developing the profile, I would say we pick one of the other. If you time is an issue, then we pick one or the other. Pick life science or pick business in order to pursue and develop the real pointy part for, develop the real hook for. And then once you get in, you double major. Like I said, getting into either one, neither one is unpopular, but with the exception of like Wharton, NYU with Stern, Berkeley with Haas, the admit rates between business and non-business. Cornell, business. Yeah. Aside from those, business and bio about the same admit rate. Yeah. Um, so strategically, it doesn't really matter which one you pick. Okay, good question. All right, so that one. Okie doke. Next question, and this is a really good one, and maybe one that we could even end on because it's probably pretty common. What about hospital clinical volunteer experience? Is it important for students that want to pursue life science and pre-med? I used to say no because I would always say volunteering is nothing more than pushing geriatric people around in a lobby and pointing people in the right direction. But it's better than nothing. And it is something that after having worked with students on their med school applications for a handful of times, you get to see how much volunteering matters and how much being in the medical community matters. Now, unless you're applying to a BSMD program, you're not applying directly into anything related to med. So it's not as though you're having your application read by somebody that's, that cares that you're doing volunteering, particularly, in a hospital for an undergrad application. But again, it's better than doing nothing. It gets you good exposure. It's something to draw from for the essays that will give you that will ask what do you want to major in and why. So I like it. I think it's good. It is competitive. Washington Hospital and Fremont, they carry a wait list. The programs that are out in Santa Clara at Kaiser at 16 years old, and you got to do like this weird commitment thing where it's like you got to commit to going 1 to 3 in the afternoon for like a year, and no high school kid could do that. So, um, you know, hospital volunteering, clinical volunteering works. If you can't fit that in, hospice volunteering, I think works. Doing stuff with blood drive works. So, anything related. I used to be like, oh no, it doesn't matter. It's not that related. But I mean, what's going to be that related? It's not like you're going to be, performing surgery on anyone. It's not like you're going to be prescribing meds in a summer program. So do what you can. And I think that this is good. And it's good to help people and it's good to get exposure. So I love it. Um, Okie doke. Um, so that's it. We've got two more of these, like I said. I hope you found this interesting. If you found it boring in any way, or you're like, you really should have talked about this, you can let me know. I don't get offended about this stuff. I like making things enjoyable for people. But we'll go over the next two. Like I said, maybe end of November, beginning of December, we do the leadership volunteering because nobody has anything going on right around the holidays, right? And then the third part, we'll probably do it at a time that can accommodate everyone. Also, if you've got preferences on time, the only reason that I come up with this time is because Gabby says that most people tend to be around at this time. But if something works better, then please let me know because I can, as long as I get enough time out, I can fit it in. Um, that's all for now. I'm gonna finish things up. I'll post this to our little YouTube channel. And Gabby will send out the link afterwards. So if I talk too fast or if anybody missed it, then we'll be good to go, and you can wind up getting accommodated with that. But that's all. Thank you very much for your attention. Follow up with me with any questions. I'll post the link and I'll see you soon. Oh, hold on, we have one more. Oh, how fun. Okay, good. Thank you. Oh, that's so nice. Appreciate that. Um, don't even mention it. I'll post this. We'll be good to go. Ask me questions in the meantime. I always like doing these things. Talk to y'all soon. Have a great weekend. Bye, all.